For the sake of YouTube's strict copyright rules, this episode of Awesome Albums doesn't include the music. You are welcome to continue watching this version, but I recommend going to the Awesome Albums website or the other link below to enjoy the Awesome Albums episode the way I intended it to be heard. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Awesome Albums with Awesome Andrew. Ordinarily, I pick an album by an artist who got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and talk about one of their albums in the next video. Well, I wrote my script based around an artist who I was confident would get in. I mean, come on, he was in third place in the votes. Today, we're going to be talking about Warren Zevon's album, Excitable Boy. Ordinarily, I introduce the band, but this is kind of a unique case where every song has a different lineup of musicians, so I'll pretty much just introduce our star of the show, Warren Zevon, who does lead, harmony, and backing vocals, as well as playing piano, organ, and synthesizer. When I introduce each song, I'll list the musicians who played on that song and mention them and provide pictures if I could find one. Now, let's go to the history section, which is so short I can sum it up in one sentence. This is Zevon's third album and was released on January 18th, 1978. That's all the history I can find on it, unfortunately. Now let's talk about the album cover. The album cover was designed and photographed by Jimmy Wachtel, featuring Warren against a red-orange background, with the back cover featuring Warren sitting against a white background with the list of songs with the musician lineup for each song. Don't worry, you don't have to pause this and write this down. Again, I'll list that for each song when we get to them. The album liner, called Willie on the Plate, was photographed by Laurie Sullivan and prepared by Warren's wife at the time, Crystal. I found this interesting magazine ad promoting the album with the plate shattered. With all that out of the way, let's get on to the music. Our opening song features Waddy Wachtel on guitars and harmony, bass legend Leland Sklar, Russell Kunkel on drums, and Danny Korchmar on percussion. The song is about a man named Johnny who is very well liked, kind-hearted, and cheers everyone up. He is praised when he strikes up the band, causing people to dry their tears and bring them happiness. People describe this song's uncharacteristic optimism to be similar to Muhammad's Radio from Zevon's previous album. Freddie Get Ready, rock steady when Johnny strikes up the band. Due to the reference of Freddie, a lot of people think the song is about Queen, Freddie Mercury, and some people also interpret Johnny is my main man who puts your mind at ease to be about a drug dealer. However, one article I read says that Zevon is likely referring to Johnny Carson, and Freddie might be referring to Fred de Cordova, Carson's longtime producer. Personnel on this song includes Wachtel on guitar, Bob Glaub on bass, Russell Kunkel on drums, and the Gentleman Boys, which consists of Jackson Brown, Jorge Calderon, Kenny Edwards, J.D. Souther, and Wachtel on backing and harmony vocals. The song has a really interesting story to it, written by Zevon and David Lindell. Zevon met Lindell in 1974 in Sitges, Spain, where Lindell was running a bar called the Dubliner. Zevon said, in 1974, I ran off to Spain and got a job in an Irish bar called the Dubliner in Sitges on the Costa Brava. The proprietor was a piratical ex-merc named David Lindell. He and I wrote the song at the bar one afternoon over many jars. And quote from Zevon from the booklet from Zevon's anthology compilation album. The story of the song is about a man named Roland, who is a Norwegian who becomes embroiled in the aftermath of the Nigerian Civil War and Congo crisis of the 1960s. The lyrics mention of a Congo war in the years 1966 and 1967, which led to the mercenary-led Kisagani Mutinies after the Congo crisis. He earns a reputation as the greatest Thompson gunner, a reputation that gets attention from the CIA. Roland is betrayed by a fellow mercenary, Van Owen, who blows off Roland's head. Roland becomes this phantom, headless Thompson gunner who catches Van Owen in a Mabasa bar and guns him down. He continues to be the spirit that wanders the night where other conflicts are haunted by Roland. The final lyrics of the song: now it's 10 years later, but he still keeps up the fight. In Ireland, in Lebanon, in Palestine, and Berkeley, Patty Hearst heard the burst of Roland's Thompson gun and bought it. I'm going to break these lyrics down because these references are fascinating. Ireland is referring to the Troubles, an ethno-nationalist conflict in Northern Ireland that lasted from the late 1960s to 1998. And Lebanon is referring to the Lebanese Civil War, which lasted from 1975 to 1990. Palestine is referring to the Israeli-Palestinian War, which has been going on since 1948, still going on. Berkeley refers to Berkeley, California. May 15th, 1969 was known as Bloody Thursday, basically a bunch of protests in People's Park. Governor Ronald Reagan sent in the California Highway Patrol and other officers to end the protest. Eventually, the California National Guard was sent in to overwhelm the protesters with deadly weapons. The last part is referring to Patty Hearst, granddaughter of American publishing magnate William Randolph Hearst. She first became known for her events of her 1974 kidnapping by the Lebanese Liberation Army. She was finally found and arrested after being on the run for 19 months for serious crimes she committed with other members of the group. Anyway, it is believed that Roland's spirit possessed Patty Hearst. Now, there is a discrepancy with the song lyrics as far as being historically accurate. While there was a war in Biafra in 1966 and 67, Biafra is in Nigeria, not the Congo. Screenwriter David Cope named the big game hunter in the Lost World Roland Tembo, played by Pete Postlethwaite, and then thought it would be fun to make his nemesis last name Van Owen, played by Vince Vaughn. One more fact about the song is that this was the last song that Zevon performed before his death in 2003, when performing on The Late Show with David Letterman. He wanted to perform Mutineer, but Letterman wanted Roland to close the show, so Zevon sang Mutineer first, then Genius, then closed with Roland, and later after Zevon died, Letterman did a tribute and re-ran the Mutineer segment, so Zevon did indeed play Mutineer last. This song, like the last one, features a lot of notable musicians, Wachtel playing guitar and vocal harmonies, Bob Glaub playing bass, Russell Kunkel playing drums, Jim Horn plays saxophone, Linda Ronstadt and Jennifer Warnes sing backing vocals, and Zevon was joined by LeRoy Marinell for writing the song. Zevon said, "Roy's an old friend who's got an amazing sense of humor, and as we're sitting around one day, I said, 'Roy, how come nobody ever lets me play lead guitar?' And Roy said, 'Well, Warren, if you've ever heard me play guitar, you'd understand the situation.' He said, 'You get good ideas on the guitar, but then you get excited.' To which I replied, 'Well, Roy, I'm just Excitable Boy.' And we laughed and spent the next half hour writing the song," end quote. The lyrics of the song are interesting, as this boy or young man go from being weird to scary. The lyrics first mention he goes to dinner in his Sunday best, but starts rubbing a pot roast all over his chest. And later he goes to a 4 a.m. show at the Clark, which, based on the time, it's most likely an adult movie. He takes a bite of the usheret's leg, which is definitely more weird and scarier than just putting pot roast on your chest, but people still say that he's just an excitable boy. Next, he takes little Susie to the junior prom, where he, words I can't say on YouTube, probably. And again, people still just assume he's an excitable boy. Then things get really weird. After 10 long years, they let him out of the home, excitable boy, they all said. And he dug up her grave and built a cage with her bones, excitable boy, they all said. What? That's not an excitable boy. I'm going to quote Justin from The Observer. With that horrific turn, the song transforms from being about some oddball weirdo into a fable about our inability to diagnose mental health problems in this country and our willingness to just brush them off when they don't conform to an American ideal. Lastly, this song was considered but not used for his 1976 self-titled album. I'll be spending a while on this one. Wachtel plays guitar on this one, but we also have two guest musicians, John McVie, bass player, and Mick Fleetwood, drummer of Fleetwood Mac. The original version opens with a famous quote from Shakespeare's Hamlet, where Prince Hamlet meditates on mortality while holding the skull of his late jester. "Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him well," but I think the final lyrics are a lot more interesting. "I saw a werewolf with a Chinese menu in his hand." By the way, the Lee Ho folks that he mentions in the song was a real place. It was a Chinese restaurant in London's Chinatown. However, the restaurant sadly closed in 2008. Wachtel reflects on the song and said that it was the hardest song to get down in the studio I've ever worked on, end quote. However, he did say that he laid down the solo in one take. They also tried 7 different configurations of musicians in the recording studio before being satisfied with McVie and Fleetwood's contributions. And due to the number of takes and the musician fees led to the song eating up most of the album's budget. Fortunately, their efforts paid off. The song was released as a single in May 1978, backed with Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner, although Zevon would have preferred either Johnny Strikes Up the Band or Tenderness on the Block, which we'll hear later. This was Zevon's only top 40 hit his entire career, hitting number 21 on the Billboard Hot 100. Although Linda Ronstadt did a cover of his song Poor Poor Pitiful Me in 1978, which went to number 31 on the charts, which is a great cover, by the way, check that out. Anyway, Werewolves also hit charts in other countries, including number 8 on the Australian Kent Music Report, number 18 on the Canadian RPM Top Singles chart, number 15 on the US Catchbox Top 100, and number 87 on the UK charts in 1987, among others. Zevon reflected later on the song and said, "I don't know why that became such a hit. We didn't think it was suitable to be played on the radio. It didn't become an albatross. It's better that I bring something to mind than nothing. There are times when I prefer that it was Bridge Over Troubled Water, but I don't think bad about the song. I still think it's funny. He also called it a novelty song and also described it as a dumb song for smart people. This was another song that Zevon considered to put on the 1976 album, but Jackson Browne, who was the album's producer, convinced Zevon to hold off for a bit since the French Inhaler and the Desperados Under the Eaves wouldn't have made it into the second record with Asylum Records, so they had to record those songs while they had a chance. Browne also saw the lyrics and thought the song had potential and began performing the song live at his own concerts before Zevon's version came out. T-Bone Burnett also performed the song on the first leg of Bob Dylan's Rolling Thunder Revue Tour fall of 1975. Burnett's version also included alternate and partially improvised lyrics mentioning classical Hollywood cinema, mentions Jimmy Hoffa, and adult film stars Marilyn Chambers and Linda Lovelace. You better stay away from him, he'll rip your lungs out, Jim. I'd like to meet his tailor. Sometimes when performing the song live, he would replace I'd like to meet his tailor to and he's been looking for James Taylor. The song was written by Zevon, Marinell, and Wachtel. Marinell said, writing Werewolves of London was a good lesson in never taking yourself too seriously. On most songs you write, you labor, and you craft after a song for weeks. You put everything into it. Every word is agonizing, and people say, that's a nice song. Werewolves was literally a 15-minute song that none of us took seriously. We did it as spontaneously as could be, and look what happened. The story starts out with Crystal, Warren, and I sitting around my house in Venice. Actually, Phil Everly liked to stay up all night and watch old movies, and he had talked to Warren about a great English movie called Werewolves of London that was made in 1930. It actually came out in 1935, by the way. He thought we should write a song called Werewolves of London and make it into a dance craze. So Warren was telling me the story, and I said, what a great idea. Waddy walks in, and he says, you mean, "Ow!" We said, whoa, great. Zevon said something similar in 1983 on the Off the Record special with Mary Turner. He said, actually, Phil Everly said in the course of one of these albums he was making, he said, I need a dance song. Why don't you write me something like Werewolves of London? You have to understand that if the song is about anything, it's about the kind of friendship where you don't question what your friends say. Waddy and I have been conversing that way for over a decade, and so we were at LeRoy Marinell's house in Venice, California, and we were playing and I was strumming 3 chords. Waddy walked in and said, what are you guys doing? And we said, we're doing the Werewolves of London. Waddy said, oh, that's easy. I said, that's great. We just rapped. Waddy said, I saw a werewolf with a Chinese menu in his hand, and I'd throw something back. Crystal wrote everything down. She had this notebook, steno pad she was always carrying around for occasions like that. I guess we'd come up with lines and she'd write them down. It went very fast, end quote. When Zevon performed the song in 2000, a fight broke out at the Bowery Ballroom in New York. Zevon waited for the fight to end and said, I bet this never happens at Sting concerts, and then continued the song. One more thing I want to mention is in the 2007 remastered version of Excitable Boy, there is a bonus alternate version of Werewolves. The vocals are more drowned out by the music with a more prominent bass heard, but there are some extra lyrics that aren't in the final version. I saw a werewolf drinking a pina colada at Trader Vic's in the Hill, dressed to the nines, and his hair was perfect. Hit me. I don't know why those lyrics were removed from the final version, but if you listen closely, there's an editing error in the final version, possibly from some more of these cut lyrics. And some more cut lyrics that are only in this alternate version were, bite down, in the first chorus, and at the end of the first chorus was, dangerous man, come down, listen, and at the end of the second chorus, draw blood. But yet Draw Blood was still kept in a later part of the song. Come Down Listen was played during the song's interlude. I told you, we'd be in the song for a while. Let's move on to the next song now. Wachtel and Kunkel are joined by Leland Sklar, who returns to this song, as well as the Gentleman Boys. Karla Bonoff joins them on harmonies. The song compares being dumped to being crucified. He laments about opportunities lost and times long gone. An earlier version of the song featured on the compilation album Preludes, Rare and Unreleased Recordings consists of alternate lyrics changing the song's focus from romantic loss to the singer lamenting how he fell from a cruel, heartbreaking woman against the advice of his friends. This song was a strong contender for the title of Bob Dylan's 1997 album, Time Out of Mind. In 2002, when Zevon revealed that he was dying from cancer, Dylan added for weeks in his concerts Zevon's songs. Accidentally Like a Martyr was the second most performed song with 22 performances during October and November. This song features Wachtel and Kortchmar playing guitar. Kortchmar playing guitar in the left channel and Wachtel in the right channel. Wachtel also plays synthesizer too. Bob Glaub plays bass, Greg Ladany plays bell, Jeff Porcaro plays drums, and the Gentleman Boys do the harmonies. Zevon wrote in the liner notes to the compilation album I'll Sleep When I'm Dead, I only had a brief flirtation with heroin, never a tragic love story, end quote. And that supposedly inspired this song as well as Carmelita on the 1976 album. This song had an almost disco sound to it. I mean, it is 1978. It might be referencing Gladys Knight and the Pips. The Midnight Train Goes Both Ways, possibly referencing the song Midnight Train to Georgia. A lot of musicians here. Zevon and Wachtel are joined by Kenny Edwards on bass, Louis Damian on harana, Jim Horn on recorder, Rick Murata on drums, Manuel Vasquez on requinto, Jorge Calderon on harmonies and Spanish vocals, and Arthur Gerst on Mexican harp. Calderon also acts as a co-writer too. I heard Woodrow Wilson's guns, I heard Maria crying. Last night I heard the news that Veracruz was dying. Zevon sings another historical song in the point of view of someone in 1914 living under President Woodrow Wilson's U.S. occupation of Veracruz. The United States occupation of Veracruz is largely remembered in Mexico as one of the ugliest moments of betrayal in the Mexican Revolution, when diplomatic relations between the two countries broke down and Americans occupied central Mexican port, cutting off Mexican President Victoriano Huerta's ammunitions that his troops needed to fight. This song hints a bit at the immigration issues of America, which is relevant to Zevon, who was of Jewish Ukrainian heritage. I'm going to try my best to pronounce this, but I'm not a Spanish native speaker. Aquel día yo juré hacia el puerto volveré, aunque el destino cambió mi vida en Veracruz moriré. This was spoken by Calderon, and it roughly translates to, on that day I swore, to the port I will return, even though destiny changed my life, in Veracruz I will die. Jackson Browne joined Zevon as co-writer of the song, and is another song that features the Gentleman Boys during vocal harmonies. Wachtel plays guitar, Kenny Edwards plays bass, and Rick Murata plays drums. This song retains echoes of Backs Turned Looking Down the Path off of Zevon's 1976 album. It's a beautiful song about a father learning that his daughter is making good decisions. She's not a little girl anymore. She's all grown up. Wachtel, Edwards, and Murata joined Zevon for the song. Record World called it rock and roll at its angriest. An edited version of the song was released as a single, and this edited version is featured on the compilation album A Quiet Normal Life, although the lyrics on the back cover feature the unedited version lyrics. The digital download and streaming versions of the album use the album version of the song. I'm hiding in Honduras. These lyrics may refer to the short exile of American short story writer O. Henry, Will Porter. In 1894, while working as a bank teller in Austin, Texas, Porter embezzled $5,000. He fled to New Orleans and then Honduras to avoid prosecution. At the time, U.S. companies began their major export of bananas from Honduras to the U.S., so the New Orleans-Honduras route was a well-traveled one. Porter stayed in Honduras 11 months but returned to Austin to be near his terminally ill wife. He was arrested and served time in jail. The song is another historical song about a man gambling in Havana when he gets in trouble and must ask his father for help. He's hiding in Honduras, scared, and waiting for his dad to send him lawyers, guns, and money. I went home with a waitress the way I always do. How was I supposed to know that she was with the Russians too? Zevon came up with the title on one of his many adventures. He and his label rep, Bert Stein, were on a trip to Kauai, Hawaii, where they met this woman who was going to take them to a friend's house. On the way, she mentioned that her friend might not be home, in which case they'd have to break in. Zevon started to think of the letter he'd have to write his label boss if things go south. Send lawyers, he said. And guns, Stein added. And money, Zevon said. Although another interpretation I found on the internet said, I happen to know straight from Warren's mouth, this song is about running out of money in a crack house in L.A. For some reason, people want to put this romantic foreign spin on it when it's damn romantic enough to find yourself out of money in Crack House LA in the 80s. Although I can't confirm the validity of this comment, especially since the person said this happened in the 1980s when the song came out in 1978. Another quote from Justin, who wrote that article on The Observer, said, Lawyers, guns, and money are all images with negative connotations, but while his character hides out and prays for his life, they become the objects of liberation. And when those three things become tantamount to a new trinity of salvation in the album's closing moments, we realize that the way our country acts toward the world often has cosmically horrible consequences and leaves blood on our hands. And that truth might be the scariest thing of all, end quote. This song concludes the original 1978 version of the album, but I have a couple bonus songs I want to touch on real quick. The song describes a man wishing to acquire a fleet of trucks for several different purposes like hauling his guns, alcohol, and one-night stands away. He even wants a truck to haul his body away when he's dead and to haul his pain away. Thule was the nickname of Zevon's longtime lover and the mother of Jordan Zevon, Marilyn Livingston Dillow. The song depicts a situation of romantic loss between the singer and a girl named Thule. The song seems to be mostly reminiscent of times past, with the singer saying that his heart will be empty without her. The version released on the 2007 expanded version of Excitable Boy is a solo piano version of the song, but an alternate version appears on Prelude's rare and unreleased records. The song almost foreshadows orchestral interludes that appear on the next album, Bad Luck in Dancing School. This song seems to be ignited by his meetings with Igor Stravinsky and became a bonus track on the expanded version of this album. And that concludes the album. And it was a great album too. It hit number 8 on the US Billboard 200, even staying on the chart at 54 at the end of the year. It was also on the Australian Kent Music Report at number 9, and New Zealand's RMNZ at number 12. It reached gold in the US after selling 500,000 copies on April 17, 1978, also hit gold in Canada on June 1, 1978, and finally hit platinum for selling over 1 million copies in the US on November 7, 1997. To no surprise, this album brought Zevon to commercial attention and remains the best-selling album of his career. This has been Awesome Andrew telling you that Warren Zevon's Excitable Boy is an awesome album, and hope to see you in another video.